I have a lot of old and broken arrows that I can't use anymore, and I only have one bow. So to fix this problem, we can make a bow out of arrows. Now, back to the arrows. We have some good quality and low quality arrows, and we need to use a jig to separate them. No, not that kind of jig. The jig I'm talking about will measure the stiffness of each arrow, and you'll see once I do a close-up that I have some lines marked out at about how far down the arrows will flex. And they won't actually flex down that far. That's the measurement of the top of the paint bucket that I'll be using. Now the arrow will flex down, and we'll check out where it's at on my jig. And according to the jig, it says it's stiff, so that means it's a higher quality arrow. I'm going to do that for the rest of the arrows and separate them based on their stiffness. And to be completely honest with you, we could tell just by the looks of them. Now I also noticed some of the arrows were splintered, so I went ahead and cut those sections off so it didn't splinter whenever I was shooting it. Now we're all good with those arrows. We separated them into the strong and more flexible arrows, but we're going to start making the bow in the middle, and I'm using the stiff arrows in the middle so it provides shape and support for the bow. And while I'm taping them, I put some taper on one arrow and then connect it to another arrow. I don't just wrap duct tape around a bundle, because if I did that, then arrows could fall out, especially in the middle where there's no tape touching it. So you basically just want to make sure that there's duct tape touching all of the arrows. Then we'll move on to the wings of the bow, and I'm using the weaker arrows there so that they can flex more, and I'm taping them up pretty much the same way that I taped up the middle. Now here's where I made a mistake. I attached the wings to another soft arrow, and then I attached them both to the center, but I just eyeballed it. I really needed to measure out where the center was going to be and then make sure it was even on the right and left side. I didn't do that, and that meant my bow wasn't even, so I had to go back and retape it. Here I'm making the bowstring. I'm using some jute twine, and I'm wrapping it up with dental floss. And jute twine is really fibrous, and we don't want that in a bowstring, so I went ahead and burned all those fibers off. And then I waxed up the string, and that'll provide some protection, and it also keeps the fibers in place. Now I didn't go too into depth with how I made that bowstring, because as usual I don't know what I'm doing, but it ends up turning out in the long run. But there's a bunch of other tutorials out there if you really are interested. Now you'll see in a second, this is what I'm talking about when I said my bow is uneven. Here it's bending a little bit more on the left than it is the right, and we don't want that in a bow, so I had to go back and retape everything. Now this isn't the safest bow in the world. There's a lot of creaking and cracking, and I don't know where it's coming from, but like I said earlier, it normally turns out in the end.